Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I'm going to be working here with the Simon Says Stamp July 2017 card kit, and here is a quick look at everything that came in the kit. This card kit only came with 4 pieces of cardstock, so I have added in another additional piece from My Favorite Things, and that color is called Orange Fizz. So jumping right in, here I am using the die set from the kit to cut a bikini from this pretty pink flamingo paper. Using my Lawn Fawn stitch rectangle dies, I have also cut from the blue and white striped paper a rectangle measuring 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and then from some Neenah Solar White, another rectangle measuring 2 1/4 by 3 1/2 inches. So here I'm just using my ATG gun to attach the blue and white striped panel to the top of an A2 size folding card. I've stamped the sentiment "Sending a Summer Hello" onto that piece of Neenah cardstock, and I used Lawn Fawn Deep Sea ink to stamp that. Here I'm going to pop that up with some foam tape. I'll then attach that just slightly off center to the front of the card base, and I really loved all of the paper that came in this kit, so I wanted to showcase a bunch of that. I've cut some strips from a few of the other papers. I'm going to go ahead and add some banner edges to the bottom of those, and then I will attach those to the card and trim them down. Once I have that top panel secure, I'm going to go ahead and use some Ranger Multi-Matte Medium to attach the bikini die cut. Then finally, I'm going to finish this card up by attaching some of the flat sequins that came in the kit, and I'm again using Multi-Matte Medium for that. And that completes card number 1. For card number 2, I've again used my Lawn Fawn stitch rectangle die measuring 3 3/4 by 5 inches to cut out a panel from this polka dot paper. Here I am just laying out the bikini die cuts. I'm going to turn this into a shaker window. Now that I have my front panel ready to go, I'm just trimming down some acetate here to slightly smaller than my rectangle. and I'll attach that using my ATG gun. And now that I have the acetate on the back of the window, I'm going to go ahead and replace the cutout of the bikini top, and then I will use some multi-matte medium to glue that inner portion of the die cut back in, so it'll look like a bikini top and you'll see the strings and everything. You'll see when I pull away there. Now that I've got that added in, and I did actually go and add in all of the little dots for the bows. That was a little bit crazy. I don't think it was necessary, but I was in one of those moods where I wanted it to be perfect, so I took the extra time. Here I'm using those foam strips that came in the kit, and I really wanted to like these. I didn't entirely dislike them. They did move really well. The problem was that the backing came off of them. So I think it's probably just a case of they're so thin that, you know, if it were a 1/4 of an inch thick, maybe it wouldn't be quite as much of a problem, but because they're such thin strips, which is really handy, it just didn't really want to stay on. So I did work with it. I think it is probably better for small projects. It was nice to be able to curve it and not have to worry about trimming down the Scotch foam tape. I did think it was thick enough that everything would shake around once I got it in there. So overall, I know I will use the rest of these. I'm not sure I'll buy any additional ones, or I may try a different brand and see how those work. But for a very narrow border that is just simply straight, I think they work great. But when you need to really move and position it around, I'm not so sure I would pull these out again. And then I'm adding in the rest of the Scotch foam tape to cover the rest of the backing. Here I'm using some Recollection sequins. These I picked up at Michael's, and they came in one of those, you know, set of 5 different color shakers. And again, because the backing wanted to come off of those thin strips, I did have a little bit of trouble getting the sequins in there and having them not stick to the foam tape. It really wasn't too bad though. I cut a small white panel, just large enough to cover the opening for the bikini, and I've attached that there. I'm going to peel away the rest of the backing on that foam tape. Then in the center on that panel, I'll use my ATG gun. I'll peel away the foam tape around the borders. And attach that to the front panel of my card base. And this card and the previous card, that is the Orange Fizz cardstock that I added to the kit. I again trimmed out a couple of strips from the other papers in the kit. Here I'm stamping the sentiment Beach Please, and I'm using that Lawn Fawn Deep Sea ink again. I'm going to create a banner edge on both of those. I added the pink strip just flat onto the card, and then just a short line of yellow washi tape. And then I popped up that Beach Please sentiment using some Scotch foam tape. And here I had from actually a previous card kit from I think last summer. These are October Afternoon puffy stickers. So I pulled off 2 of those hearts and added those to finish this card off. And that completes card number 2. Okay, this card is folded slightly differently. I got the idea from a Jennifer McGuire video, which I will link to below. I ended up trimming my card slightly differently than she did hers. I wanted my bottom fold to be a little bit shorter, but the basic idea is the same. So I started out with a rectangle that was 4 1/4 by 9 1/2, and then I scored that at 5 1/2, and then also at 7 1/2. So you just want to score the opposite directions. I scored down and then up, and I hope you can see that in the video. I'll try to explain, and I will give the measurements in my blog post, but it's basically just you're folding the bottom portion up and then down, and that's going to make a pull down card. And then I wanted to make a beach scene, and for a while I've been wanting to try and find some type of card that I could do using that brown paper bag that comes in the kit, because I usually end up throwing them away every month. So I ended up tearing a piece of that off and attaching that to make it my sand for the ocean scene. Then for the background, I used this minty light blue panel that came in the card kit, and I attached that using my ATG gun and then trimmed that down. For the water, I added in My Favorite Things cardstock, and that color is called After Midnight. And mine measured about 1.5 inches to make the water. So the sky ended up being 4 inches, and then 1.5 inches made the 5 1/2 for that back card panel. Here I'm using some graphics vellum and stamping out the clouds that came in the stamp set. And I'm using Hero Arts Unicorn ink. Now this is a pigment ink, so it took a while for this to dry. I actually ended up stamping this, setting the rest of the card aside, and I just let that dry for a full 24 hours before I came back and trimmed everything out. Here I'm laying out how I want those clouds to look, and I'll attach those then with my ATG gun. I really like that look of the opaque white, but then having that clear vellum border around them. I trimmed off the edges of those clouds that were hanging over there, and here I'm going to use Lawn Fawn Mermaid ink to stamp the sentiment Time to Relax. And then I also added in some of those bird stamps using the same stamp color. And here you can see the card in action. And that completes card number 3. Card number 4 is fairly simple. I have cut a bunch of bikinis from all of the different colored papers that came in the kit. And I mean, when you've got a yellow and white polka dot paper and a bikini image, you've got to use the two together. I kept humming that song in my head the entire time I was making all of these cards. I finally settled on mixing and matching the two on either end of that polka dot bikini, and here I'm just going to attach those again using my multi-matte medium. You can see there I used my grid that I used for my Misty just to give a little bit of a barrier there so that I could just slightly slide those bikini bottoms up to match it. That way I knew they were nice and even. And then here I'm using that grid the exact same way to make sure the bikini tops are even. Here I'm stamping the sentiment bikinis are like fries, you can't have just one, and I'm using Lawn Fawn's Peachy Keen ink for that. And that will complete card number 4. For card number 5, I've again used my Lawn Fawn Stitch Rectangle borders, and I have cut out of this blue navy paper with the plus patterns on it, rectangle measuring 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and then again out of Neenah Solar White, a rectangle measuring 2 3/4 by 4 inches. I'm going to attach that base panel to the front of my card, and I did add a strip from one of the other pattern papers just along the edge there. And using my ATG gun, I'm going to attach that white panel. Here I'm going to stamp the sentiment Sending a Summer Hello, and for this card I'm using Stampin' Up's Flirty Flamingo ink. And then to finish that off, I'm again pulling a couple of stickers from that Summertime Pillow Puff sticker set. And that will complete card number 5. On to card number 6. This card was incredibly time consuming, but I am really pleased with how everything came out. I decided I wanted to create some banners, and I ended up trimming out a strip of paper from each of the colored papers that measured a 1/2 inch wide, and then from those strips I went and cut those down into tabs that measured 1.25 inches. Once I had all of those cut, I then went ahead and scored each of them at 5/8 of an inch and folded them over. I cut a panel out of Neenah Solar White measuring 5.5 by 4 1/4 using those Lawn Fawn Stitch rectangle dies. And here I'm going to stamp on that the sentiment Sending a Summer Hello, and I'm again using that Lawn Fawn Mermaid ink. Now I've trimmed out some Baker's Twine. This is a mint and cream color, and I decided I wanted to do 3 banners. So I'm going to lay out my strands and then decide which tabs, the order of how I want the colored tabs to be. And once I got that set up, I went ahead and used my ATG gun and then folded those tabs together around the strands. And I did go ahead and then cut a banner edge into the bottom of each of those tabs. After I attached that first tab, I decided I'd better attach the string first so that I was spacing those out in a way that would look good on the front of the card base. After I got all 3 of those strands attached, I went ahead and popped this whole base up on some foam tape. I wanted to give the card a little extra dimensions, and so it was just pretty it was pretty flat. And then this also added a little extra security to make sure that those strings wouldn't come undone. Here I'm just attaching that directly onto my card base. And then I did come back with my Wink of Stella pen, and I added a little bit of shimmer to just a few of those flags. And that completes card number 6. For card number 7, I decided I wanted to make a shaker card. So I'm using 2 of the Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle dies, one measuring 3 3/4 by 5 inches, and the other measuring 3 1/2 by 4 1/2 inches. And I've just stacked those together to create my frame. And then I also cut another panel that was 3 1/2 by 4 1/2 inches. So that would be the background of the base of my card. On that, I'm going to stamp again the sentiment, bikinis are like fries, you can't have just one, and I'm stamping that with Simon Says Stamp Orange Crush ink. Here I'm using my ATG gun to attach the acetate window behind my frame. And here I'm again using those foam tape strips that came in the card kit. And these did work better. Like I said, when you've got a really thin frame, they're really handy. I liked them much better on this card than I did on the previous one. And I did go ahead and also double those up so I would have quite a bit of room for everything to shake around. So for my shaker window, I went ahead and filled that with some Doodlebug mixes of sequins. There's some from the yellow, green, turquoise, and pink mixture. And then I did also use what I had that was left of those flat sequins that came in the kit. Oh, and I also threw in some additional of the bikini die cuts that I had previously cut out. And that completes card number 7. For card number 8, I decided I wanted to do some heat emboss resisting. So I'm using the bikini stamps that came in the stamp set, and I'm just stamping those with Versamark ink. And then I will go ahead and heat set those using the Simon Says Stamp white detailed embossing powder. And once that was all set, I used some of my Distress Oxide inks to blend in the background. So here I am using Cracked Pistachio, Broken China, and Faded Jeans. I trimmed this panel down to 4 by 5 1/4, and here I used my ATG gun to attach that to the card base. Then I again used my Lawn Fawn Stitch rectangle dies, and I cut out a 1 3/4 by 3-inch rectangle. And on that I went ahead and stamped that same bikini stamp from the set, as well as the Sentiment Beach Please. And I'm using the Lawn Fawn Mermaid ink again. Then I decided I wanted to fill that in a little more. So I'm using one of the glaze pens. This is Souffle, it's number 929. Then I used some lime green and white baker's twine to create a bow around that. And then I also used my Uniball Signo white gel pen to create some polka dots on the bikini. I popped that up here with some foam tape, placed it on the front of the card, and that will complete card number 8. So for card number 9, I decided I wanted to again showcase these really pretty papers. And here I have some strips of scrap cardstock. Now on the back of those, I have placed some temporary adhesive. So I put that center strip down first, just slightly off center and on the diagonal. And then I'm going to use the scrap paper strip going across to make sure that I keep the lines in between the colored paper stripes equal. So I'm just attaching the paper with my ATG gun. That way it'll be permanent. But with each row, I'm going to move that scrap paper down until I have a striped piece of paper. And then you'll see here shortly I'll pull away both of those scrap pieces of paper, and I've got sort of a stripes on the diagonal there. I was really happy with how this card came out. It's a tie between this one and the one with all the flags on it as to which one ended up being my favorite. Okay, so I just trimmed off all the edges, and this is what I was left with. I think that's a pretty cool effect. And then I went ahead and trimmed out a piece of Neenah Solar White, and this is trimmed down to 1 3/4 by 2 5/8. And I just basically trimmed that so that the sentiment would fit on it. And I'm gonna again stamp that Sending a Summer Hello, and I'm using that Lawn Fawn Peachy Keen ink. And then here on the inside, I wanted to use a few more of the stamps that came with the kit. So again, using that Lawn Fawn Peachy Keen ink, I'm going to stamp the sentiment "See You Soon" and then the waves underneath that. I'll then pop that sentiment up on some foam tape attached to the front, and that will complete card number 9. Oh, no, sorry, I forgot. I did add a little bit of Wink of Stella to that polka dot paper just to give it a little extra shine. And that will complete card number 9. Okay, so for card number 10, I had a lot of strips of paper left. So I was thinking about summer and the pool, and I started thinking of a raft. So I'm going to use these strips of paper to weave together a raft for the top of my card. And here I'm using one of the little rectangles that I had left. I attached some temporary adhesive to that just to help me line up all of the rows of the paper, because these were pretty thin. Some were a 1/2 inch, most of them were 1/4 inch or just slightly smaller. So I've got all of those horizontal strips there, and I'm just weaving those through the vertical strips that are on that little base of cardstock. And this was a little tedious at first, but once you get it started, and especially having that temporary adhesive underneath it, that really helps. So I'm just stuck it in every other one and then slid it down to meet. I then went ahead and trimmed around all the edges, and I tried to keep them somewhat random. I wanted it to look like a woven raft. I then went ahead and added some ATG gun to the back of that and attached it to my card base at an angle. If I had thought ahead, this would have been cuter on a blue card base, but I was left with orange. And I do like it on the orange. I then stamped the sentiment "Time to Relax" on some Neenah Solar White cardstock, and I'm again using that Lawn Fawn Deep Sea ink to stamp that. After I have that stamped, I went ahead and trimmed it down to 1 3/4 by 1 1/8, just to trim around the sentiment. Pop that up on some foam tape. And I'll attach that to the front. And that is going to complete our 10th and final card for the kit. Here's a quick look back at all of the cards we created today. Close-ups of the card as well as a full list of supplies can be found at my blog post listed in the description below. If you enjoyed the video, please give me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.